Hello and welcome to the Courtenay podcast. My guests today are Hope Girl and Tivon, and we met under some slightly unfortunate circumstances where I was being completely ambushed online. But this was truly the blessing, the silver lining that came of it is that we have connected. And if it weren't for them, I probably would have dropped the subject altogether. I had started researching, I've been talking about the transhumanist agenda for since the beginning of the show, since I first started this, but I really didn't go very deep into all of these, white papers and really trying to understand this whole biodigital convergence for a lot of reasons. I cover a lot of things on this show. The material is actually quite dense. It's very detailed, and it's kind of like learning a new language because it's a lot of scientific jargon. Some of it's scientific jargon, and some of it is actually new jargon that they've created specifically for this field. And a lot of it is also written in very Aesopian type of language, where it's got kind of an exoteric messaging with words that we think we understand, but they have their own dictionary, and we kind of need a glossary because there's an esoteric message embedded in a lot of it. So I don't mean this to sound cryptic. It's really just all to say that, when I present material on this show, not that I claim to be an expert or know everything, but I want it to be stuff that I have at least spent considerable time with and that I feel like I have a handle on the information. And I didn't feel that way until, I really was like, okay, I can't ignore this anymore. I really need to start diving into it. And so I did. And, I think there are people who are very invested in making sure that this information is not mainstream, even though the technology has been around for a very, very long time. And so when I learned that, I was not alone in being ambushed, I was very grateful. And I really was so appreciative that there are people who are willing to share this information and make it accessible and palatable to other people. Because, if we don't understand something or we don't even know it exists, then we really can't protect ourselves and we can't protect posterity, our children, our families, our communities. And so I think that's the first step. I've been talking a lot about this technological immanentization of the eschaton. So politically speaking, that's this movement to try and recreate heaven on earth. And I think that's very much what we're seeing with this transhuman agenda. And it's very deceptive because, as usual, in typical Hegelian dialectical fashion, we're being fed different flavors. We've got the right-wing version of technocracy. We've got the left-wing version of technocracy. But, whether or not you have chocolate or vanilla, they're both ice cream. And unfortunately, technocracy, I think, has the potential to, execute a type of tyranny that is far more insidious than anything we could possibly even conceive. And so it's very important that we understand what it really means and what the technology, the emerging technology presents and what is possibly capable for them to do and how this technology can be used as an instrument for control. Now, I will preface by saying I'm not a Luddite. I don't think that, all technology is inherently evil. I think some of it is incredible. I am communicating to all of you beautiful souls through technology, and I think it has greatly enhanced the quality of life for many humans. However, in the wrong hands, it could also be used to, erode the very essence of what it means to be human. When they say humanity 1.0 is going to become humanity 2.0, they mean it. And when they mean that, this transhuman agenda is about eroding and eviscerating in some cases, because there's a subset of transhumanists who are actually post-humanists. They really believe we're going to create this post-human world. And I know humans are inherently flawed, our foibles and all. I'm personally kind of attached to them, and I would like to see humanity 1.0 continue to flourish and become the best versions of ourselves and not be perfected through synthetic means. So they are trying to do what looks like a terraforming of Earth. And I think this is possibly why some of them are saying things like we're going to, the future of human consciousness depends on expedition to Mars, where we will colonize. So this is really an agenda to change what it means to be human. So that is, for me, why this is so important, and why I do want to help explain some of these concepts that I know can seem either kind of too crazy to even look at, like it's just all theory and it's not real and practical, or it can just seem too dark. But I want to help. I've got these wonderful people who are going to help me, and we're going to tackle some of these concepts so that you have a better handle on it, and they also are involved in some solutions. So I love that. Let's, without any more rambling from me, let's bring on Hope and Tivon. How are you doing today?
We're doing great. Thank you, Courtney.
Yeah, thank you, Courtney.
So glad we finally had a chance to do this.
Me too. Me too. So I'm so grateful you have a beautiful presentation for us, which I think will help make this really accessible. So I don't know, where do you want to start? I'm going to turn that over to you.
Well, I'll just say that the whole purpose of doing this presentation with you and your audience is we want to try to help people understand these advanced emerging technologies, what they mean
Yeah.
for like the days that we're living in. And also there's solutions at the very end where, there are things people can do to protect themselves, but the number one protection is understanding it.
Yeah.
Once you understand, then you know what you can do to live a better life. And maybe the reason why people are having ailments and sicknesses and symptoms is because of some of this emerging technology. So we're just here to help, and we hope that we'll do our best to explain as much as we can.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I love that, and I know, as I said, it can be a little bit overwhelming for people. So let's dive right in, and let's start with we'll pull up the first slide. So this is turning your body into a system they control through frequencies. So yeah, tell me.
Yeah.
And we
So
know
we're
that
just
this is not new. I just want to preface that. It's not like that's not emerging.
None of this is new. It's been around for a very long time. And by the way, everything we're going to present is just a super condensed version.
Sure.
If we covered everything, this would be a 10-hour show, like I said in the message to you. So there's plenty more behind it, and all of the source documentation we've got all over our website. We're always, linking to a lot of the white papers that you were reading and different articles. So we back everything up.
Right.
Our website is Fix the World Morocco. That's our company. We make handmade EMF protection products. And so if you want to go to the next slide, just so there might be people listening that have never heard of us before. We just want to tell everybody a little bit about who we are and what we do.
Great.
Okay, so we are Christians, engineers, and scientists, and we feel it's our calling to help inform people about the technology that's being used against God's creation. We've been monitoring the news on the 5G technology moving forward, what's happened recently in the last couple of years related to medical industry, in the issue of emerging technology so that we can present them in a condensed summary and to inform the public. So along with that, we came out with a book that we wrote called Forbidden Tech. And this book we wrote in 2017 to address what we thought was the issue dealing with the combining of technology through energy, social, and biological technology that they want you to know about. In that book, we cover energy research and development in energy power generation for off-grid living, also with suppressed technology and with patents, and also dealing with what we thought at the time the technologies used for transhumanism. Now, we also have our main business that you showed earlier on ftwproject.com, where we make our EMF protection products, which are handmade products based on the work of Wilhelm Reich, Orgone Energy, and using materials that have an ability to transform electromagnetic fields in a passive manner, like shungite. And we use these to create composites in the form of different shapes that people can either wear on them or put around their body or as decor as furniture for the home and around the home. And they're made from us by hand with us and our small team in our workshop in Morocco. And then we have our third website, which is into the research and development of off-grid build your own generator, electric generator. That's an ongoing co-development project. That is we're doing some transformation with that website now. But to know more about that project is cleanenergyacademy.com.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, and if you want more like bios and things, it's all over our website. You can look into our background, education,
We'll have
and all
all
that.
the links below as well. Yeah.
Yes.
So we've been doing this, quite a while at this point. We've been researching the energy technology industry for a combined 20 years.
Wow.
That we've been working in this. So like a lot of the stuff that we wrote in our book was in 2017 before COVID. And then all of a sudden we started seeing all these technologies being rolled out during COVID, through COVID.
Yes.
And it was like, wow, it was like prophetic almost, the stuff that we wrote about in our book.
A lot of the things in that book was basically in our own research, because things that we're going through on our own, a personal level. And we find that a lot of the stuff that we wrote about or read in the white papers is actually being seen today among the population. So
yeah. And the other thing too is we're also we've been targeted individuals. So if you know anything about the targeted individual community and all that's been going on there, unfortunately, we've been targeted as well with electronic harassment, V2K, all those types
online bullying. Yeah.
And then online bullying as well. So we've been through all of that and we've survived all of that. So we are survivors on the other end of it.
Thank goodness.
But that was the catalyst to get us to start looking into this emerging technology industry, because we wanted to understand the technology that was being used against us and against all of you. So that's where it comes.
For sure. Well, I'll just share the catalyst for really diving deeper into this for me was that I had been diving into something called Game B. And so I was familiar with targeted individuals, but that seems a little, not that it's not important, significant, but it's kind of like it seems a little fringe, right? But when I was looking into this Game B stuff, they're really looking at it from more of a sociological perspective. They call it a social operating system for civilization. However, a lot of them are very involved in tech. And they keep talking about how this is going to be implemented through emerging technologies and essentially network states. And they don't necessarily use that term, but I was like, this is a network state is what they're describing. And I actually went to the network state website. For those who are not versed, this is Srinivasan, who's the CTO of Coinbase, and Peter Thiel is supporting him. He's got Srinivasan has a whole chapter in his book on network states that's devoted to seasteading, which was the inspiration largely for this concept of network state. And on the website, they actually have a section of pending approval, and Game B is on there. And so I was like, okay, my instincts on this were pretty spot on. But they kept talking about these emerging technologies, and even the Game B video has the girl opens her hand, she's got a coin, and they have on their website, they have NFT. And so they keep talking about how these emerging technologies are going to be worked through. Again, they don't use the term network states, but essentially network states. And this is when I said, okay, I have to look into this, because they're talking about this being like the future of all of humanity. Everybody is going to be looped into this kind of a, cybernetic, virtual reality, gamified, tokenized world. And what does that mean for us? Now it becomes like we could all be targeted individuals. This isn't no longer, specific, like isolated individual. This becomes a potential for everybody's reality.
And that's how we view it too. We view that targeted individuals from the past before COVID were like the test subjects, the guinea pigs. And then when COVID happened and they started rolling out all of these emerging technologies, starting in 2017, actually, an interesting year, is when they started putting a lot of these technologies out there, deploying them, turning things on. Then it's like they're basically going to be doing this targeted individual program on the entire population through these emerging technologies. That's how we view it.
Yeah.
So, if you want to go to the next slide, we're going to basically define for people what emerging technologies is.
Yes.
Okay, great. If you go to Wikipedia and you type in emerging technologies, it's a huge page, but basically emerging technologies is transhumanism. And then on the side there on the left, they've got all the different categories, and it goes even further than this, but you've got, so all of this is housed under emerging technologies, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, machine learning, nanotechnology, cultured meat, robotics, stem cell therapy, blockchain, augmented reality, DARPA, neuroscience, brain-computer interface, memristors, metamaterials, carbon nanotubes, quantum dot, electronic medical records, and so much more. So that's emerging technologies. And on the actual site, over on the right-hand side, it says transhumanism. So emerging technologies is transhumanism, and they're very, very proud about this. They boast about it. I want to go to the next slide.
Okay, so it's dealing with merging man with machine through our DNA. And Elon Musk quoting one of the things he said is that the future of humanity depends on us merging with machines. And also, so we're going to go into our DNA, some facts about our DNA. It's made up of 4 nucleic acids: adenine, guanine, thymine, and cytosine. In this patent for the mRNA injection, to discuss is changing our DNA by adding 2 extra cytosines, bringing our DNA from ATCG to ATCCCG. So then the question begs, what are the extra cytosines for? Now, the history of cytosine, and this is dealing with the development of technology. In 1998, cytosine was used in an early demonstration of quantum information processing when Oxford University researchers implemented the Deutsch-Jose algorithm on a 2-qubit nuclear magnetic resonance quantum computer. So it's just to show that you can use DNA as a means of doing a quantum algorithm. So
what is the manifestation of that? Like, what does it mean that they use DNA for quantum computing?
If when you follow technology, at least for the last 10 years, you'd find that certain key universities have been taking strands of DNA, literally putting them on a circuit board and manipulating either through electromagnetic fields, current, or through light, using DNA to do the calculations. That DNA actually can function as a switch, and a very fast one, or as a storage mechanism. That DNA strands can store vast amounts of information.
Is this tied to, like, when they talk about 6G harnessing human to power it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and the thing is that although this is a condensed presentation, you're literally looking at probably 70 years of development,
research and development
that we're covering here, and it's all done clandestinely. And a lot of the work, as you see with the transhumanism, when you look at the propaganda or the research you found about the tokenization of everything, making everything digitized with some kind of digital value through a token, the technology to enable that had to be done covertly, but and also through a series of experiments,
Right.
like the stuff that we just talked about earlier in the presentation, so that by the time it rolls out, people start scratching their head, like, how are they able to do all this and know that it's happening? You know, how is it? Because they've had 70 years of endless funding and research and development.
And just to simplify this, we're trying to show, because maybe people think, well, I'm a human and then there's machines and they're both separate. And when I hear things like they're trying to merge man and machine, that just sounds crazy. How would they actually do that, right? We're showing you they're doing it at the DNA level by inserting extra cytosines into human DNA through mRNA injections as one example. That is the same technology. It's a biological technology that is used in quantum computing. So when you start inserting these things into our DNA, then you can control these things with frequencies outside of the human body. And this is how you can read things, you can write things to the human body at this molecular level.
I think that's the goal. Also, when you look at, I'll give you an example. A lot of these developments, we're dealing with taking samples outside of the body and doing something with the samples, turning them into something else. So, for example, blood drives or the government, especially the Western governments, have always been looking for trying to get DNA, always for DNA. Like, but it could be something as
The
innocuous
Genome
as a
Project.
blood drive. Yeah, but they're always trying to get people. You volunteer. We need you for this and this and this, or we need the DNA for this. We need your DNA, and because with that DNA, you get a larger data set, and also when you can take DNA and use it as a means to create a circuit that allows you to analyze, study, do algorithms based on that technology. You enable to create. You're able to create things that are able to influence populations based on that data set that it got from the DNA of all the individuals who participated in it. So that's how you're able to bring an industrial revolution into society without them really knowing and understanding how is it possible, because everyone assumes that they have that they're able to make a choice in the matter, like, I will never become part of the machine. I won't plug myself into a machine. And it's
I
like, no, the environment's being changed around you so that it's happening automatically through, just happening automatically through like AI, through the furniture in your city, through the things that you buy, through the things that you inhale, through the things that you eat and drink. When you take it as a whole, that this is part of a coordinated plan, that's how they think they're able to do that.
So I want to get into some of the specifics of how that could happen, but before we do, I'd want to say that I've long thought that things like Neuralink, which is the most popular one, right? That's the popular. By popular, I mean most well known, right? Elon Musk is kind of the he's the face, the poster boy for this. That was partnered with Charles Lieber, right, who had the patent on the neural lace, and he has a lot of the patents and the research for a lot of this research and injectable technology. But there's Synchron, and then of course what I forgot. Neurotech, that's the other one, BlackRock's Neurotech. So there's a bunch of these. It's certainly not just Elon's Neuralink, but I've long thought that that's kind of a red herring because people do have to opt into it. And of course, I think that when I say the parasite class, I think that they do prefer you opt in. They want you to opt into your own tyranny. And the best framework, I think, to explain this would be to take a biblical framework. So that's not to say that everybody has to subscribe to it, but both Satan and God want to be chosen, right? You have free will. So if you opt into either system, and I think that the Luciferians, they want you to choose that. So yes, it becomes a hell that you can't escape. It's a tyrannical system, but they want you to choose it. So they would prefer that you say, yeah, sign me up. I want chip in my head, and then it gives me all these superhuman powers. But the reality is they don't actually need it, and they can do it through these other means, like you said, with things like smart dust, with there's various clothing that I know have graphene technology laced in them. And of course, we absorb things through our skin. And a lot of these clothing are, activewear. So we're sweating, our pores are open, they're primed for that type of absorption. And then you mentioned the foods that we eat, a lot of GMO products. So I don't know if you can elaborate on that a little bit, just so it's tangible for people, because I know it sounds kind of crazy.
Yeah. So this technology has infiltrated every part of our lives and our environment, and most people don't even know that it's there. They don't see it. They don't understand it. The stuff they're spraying in the skies, they've been saying, "Oh, those are contrails forever and ever." Meanwhile, we got patents and we got videos of the pilots putting the stuff into the planes, and all of the truth, the evidence, and the proof has come out. Yes, all the things that you mentioned about graphene being put into clothing, graphene's being put into the water supply in certain places. You can look up the contracts to see them putting it in the water supply. So it's definitely there, and it's the whole point of this is super saturation. So they're creating this giant mesh network around the entire planet in your area. It goes from the cell in your body all the way up to the satellites and back. That's the whole network. So there's arguments over can I choose? Can I not choose? And, if you are a spiritual person and you're taking a biblical perspective, there is such a thing as free will, and there is such a thing as like being protected from certain things. However, the stuff it's still in your environment. You can still get poisoned. You can still get murdered, right?
Mhm.
So, just to let people know that understanding how much of it is there and what you can do to decrease the amount of the supersaturation of all of these different components in your environment is probably one of the best defenses that we have right now. And there are many things you can do. Well, at the end of this, we have a little solution slide where we talk about things. But I hope that answers that.
Yeah.
As far as, it's not, and opting in and opting out, I think that that's very, very true. Like, we live our lives. We opted out of a lot of the world systems,
Mhm.
led our own lives, and we've had tremendous success because of that. For us, we chose the kingdom of God. We chose, our belief in Jesus, and that's the system that we go by. And when COVID came around and the world was telling us we had to do all these things and take all these shots and wear these masks, we said, no, we opt out of that. And, we were protected as a result. So we do believe that you have free will and you can say no. And that will make a tremendous difference in whether or not you prosper or whether you suffer.
It's still it's still you're still going to have days of challenge. You're still going to have challenging days, though. I mean,
Yeah.
that
For
It's
sure.
still there.
you're still in the battle.
None of us are impervious to challenge, for sure.
Yes.
So when you say that it's to build kind of like a network, what does that look like?
Do you want to describe the network?
I think, yeah, because we're only again, this is only condensed presentation,
Sure.
but basically, you're taking the total. The network is through ingesting these things into your body, through inhaling these things, you give off a signal or a broad set of signals. You have your own signature that can be read by any kind of active device or passive device remotely. That's generally the network. And now then you have to have a system that's smart enough to recognize your signal or signature anywhere on the planet at any time. Hence why we believe there's such a large push for AI in the last couple of years to have larger data centers, thousands of acres, thousands and thousands of acres of data centers that are dedicated to nothing more than consuming a ton of electricity to crunch the numbers, all for AI based analysis. And when you look at the unification of having a token based economy that you don't control, where if you lose electricity, now you go from having token millions to being penniless, right? Because you don't have a wallet with money anymore. You got tokens. When you have that and the ability to be able to track you no matter where you go 24/7,
Yep.
now you have a invisible system of control, but it's all done through a series of technologies that have evolved over 70 years. So we believe it's given a new name every couple of years. In this case, it's called the fourth industrial revolution.
Right.
It's called transhumanism.
Mhm.
But what you're
It's
looking
called
at,
biodigital
a
convergence.
biodigital convergence,
Got lots of
all
names.
these different names. But what you're looking at is a system of control that's been evolved and growing, whose architects have long died, but's been moved forward because of the innovation and technology at the government level, at the corporate level, to be able to actually try to fulfill that dream of total control. And again, it's the root of it is analog. You have signals that are coming onto your body or that you're giving off, that you're sending and receiving. Those signals can be boosted, it can be amplified by the contaminants in your body. So at the very least, just by having heavy metals in your body and having a globe that is saturated with electromagnetic radiation, with the increase of satellites, with the increase of radio and telecommunication, you can now have the ability to observe all things on the planet that are giving off their unique signature because of the contaminants in the body. Now, from moving forward from that, and by looking and seeing what's in people's blood under the microscope, you see that clearly there's other technology that's in there. But what I'm talking about is the fundamental base level of what it takes to bootstrap all the other things that's been piled on top of that. Okay, so But again, this is looking at all the white papers and all the presentations like yours, presentations that we've done that we make available on our website for people to download. They can download all our presentations for free. And that's a level of deep dive you'd have to do to get back on it, and to look at the content that you're sharing, that we're sharing, to get a more understanding of how is that possible. But it's all done at the invisible level, the microscopic level, at the particulate level, over decades. When the chemtrail program started in 1995 and we're in 2025, that's 30 years of contamination. So there's things you have to do to detox these things out of your body, to try to reverse the clock in your body. And your body is an amazing, God-given, God-made machine.
We are fearfully and wonderfully made.
So it is possible but you have to understand it's 30 years. So, give yourself a little grace, a little patience, and start today to be able to do these things, to start reversing that. But that's how they're able to do what they're able to do. They just don't tell you that. They'll call it all types of different things. But essentially, at the base level, that's what's happened, is contaminating the entire planet so that it can be monitored at a very fine level, and then kind of build from there.
Right. Yeah, they do have so many names. They always do. There's biology, right? Which is synthetic biology. They have biotech. And all of you said corporate or government, but they also have all these NGOs that are very involved and invested. Yeah, so that's kind of the vehicle for the public-private partnership is kind of through usually the NGO apparatus. I'm trying to think of what the other names are, but then they also have a whole network of universities, hundreds of universities that are grooming students in the field of the Internet of Nanobio things specifically. So when you talk about some of these things, that it's not theoretical if they've got students who are being trained to become professionals working in the field, then theoretically they wouldn't spend that kind of money unless they had something for them to do and a field for them to go into, right?
Well, that's a great segue for our next slide, slide number 5. I'm going to show people the scope of the industry, and that includes those universities you're talking about. So the IEEE stands for the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers.
Yeah.
It's the world's largest technical professional organization dedicated to advanced technology for the benefit of humanity. So this is the industry that is bringing you transhumanism. It's comprised of physicists, chemists, engineers, electricians, radio engineers, computer network, and much more than just electrical engineers. The IEEE is the world's largest international society of biomedical engineers. They make all the standards for the internet and wireless worldwide. They are involved in forming public policy for all governments. They are in 190 countries. 64% of their organization's membership is located outside of the United States. They have more than 5 million white papers, with 200,000 more added annually, and they sponsor 2,000 conferences and events in 106 countries. And here they are, they have 3,700 branches at colleges and universities in over 100 countries. So they got a cap on all of academia. They're infiltrated all through academia, controlling that particular narrative. And they have 3,625 student branch chapters of the IEEE technical societies. So that's where all this information is coming from. This is about the industry. It's really big. And most people don't even think about it. They hear IEEE, they don't know what that means.
Right.
It's this monstrously huge organization. And just so you know, you can join the IEEE, and we've joined the IEEE because he's an engineer.
It's a paid membership.
It's a paid membership, and it's not $30,000 as some people are saying, right? It's like, how much was it? $300?
Joining as in you can actually be a free member, but then it gives you access to pay. You still have to pay for the white paper, which they tend to cost $33.
That's how funny. 33. But I just want to highlight the number 5 million white papers. When did the IEEE come into existence? Do we know how long they've been around?
A long time.
Yeah.
I'm
forgetting the
different
start date.
Yeah,
okay,
it wasn't always.
That's still 5 million white papers. Like
decades.
It's huge.
That's huge.
Massive.
Who can write all that? Who has time to read all that? That's insane.
Exactly. Who can tell
and then
the papers
understand
that
it all.
are written, well, understand, but who can interpret the white papers, and who can tell the difference between a white paper that was written because that department needed another $10 million of injection research money for the tenured professors, or was written because it's a DARPA project.
Or
Who
if
can
it
tell
was
the difference?
propaganda, right? For disinformation, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
misinformation.
exactly.
So it was
That's the other thing.
1963, just for people to know. 1963
Okay.
is
Excellent.
Great. And that's something else that we always try to say in our presentations, because you need to understand what a white paper is and why white papers are written. And Dr. Lee Merritt actually did a fantastic
That's fantastic.
presentation talking about the background behind white papers and where they came from.
and the military connections, intelligence.
Yeah. So a lot of white papers, it's a paper talking about a study, talking about some work. And some of these papers are written for grant money in order to get grant money.
Right.
So that doesn't necessarily mean that everything in the white paper is 100% true, totally accurate, already deployed and working right now all the time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like a business plan.
Maybe it was a business.
Yes.
I wrote a business plan. It's on a piece of paper. Does that mean I have operational running business with buildings and customers? No, it's just something I wrote on a piece of paper, right? So
and that's going to work.
So you have to look for signs that it's something that has been implemented. You need to see evidence. So one thing we like to do is that if you see something in our real world, like something underneath the microscope that matches something written about in a white paper,
very important.
There's your evidence that it's in the real world at this point. It's no longer just theory. So we do stuff like that to try to find studies and results of things, which is a great way to merge into the next slide that we've got. This is what we were talking about. I'll let Tivon cover this.
Okay, so this is metamaterials for electromagnetic control. This goes into, again, something that's being applied today, being used right now, and by different companies. This is just an example of one of the many technologies that they're using to put in the environment. So these software-defined metamaterials are a suite of nanoscale technologies that operates in a terahertz frequency range. That's a range above microwaves, approaching infrared and red light, just right below that band. Metamaterials enable electromagnetic control over electromagnetic waves, such as imaging, radar, or wireless communications. Metamaterials in their two-dimensional analog, or their surfaces, have powerful control over electromagnetic waves from microwave to visible range. It can become programmable. Now, programmable metamaterials may not only host multiple EM functionalities that can be chosen or combined through simple software directives, but can also be provided with means to adapt to the environment or communicate with other metamaterials, thereby enabling a bunch of applications for sensing and imaging and communications. We're saturated with these metamaterials since the upgrade that started in 2017 with the fourth industrial revolution cyber-physical backbone. There was an initiative in 2017 globally to have all these universities start promoting what they've been working on, dealing with the fourth industrial revolution. That's when that term, that keyword, was started to propagate all over the internet. And also, Courtney, when I mentioned metamaterials, it actually, this particular segment we took out here didn't actually define what they are. What they really are microscopic and nanoscopic scale antennas.
Yeah.
And these antennas can be made very small. I mean, only a couple nanometers, but we're also talking upwards into the microscopic range. And they look like dust.
Like smart dust would be an example.
But what you're looking at, right?
Okay.
Some examples of it's clearly an antenna, a wafer-thin antenna, but that's like nanoscale.
Right.
So you have something like that. If you hit it with a radar beam or wireless radiation from your router, it would give off a unique signature. And from that, you can do surveillance. You can do all kinds of activity to get a lay of the land. You can, if it was a military application, you can use it to map a battle space, or you can get a 3D relief of a part of the planet. So that's why and so on the right, you see the different applications of that kind of technology. And what we're saying, this technology is very important to allow a mesh network where anything could be observed or looked at or or manipulated at any given point in time.
And so you had mentioned like smart dust could be an example. What are some other ways that I mean, back in 2017, like how could they have put that into people? With various means.
I'm sorry, mean before it's 2017?
No, you're saying this is 2017 was when they ramped up this, and
Yes.
is with the fourth industrial revolution. So I'm just wondering what
Yes.
some of the mechanisms might have been. Yeah.
Well, so what we're saying is that there's been a long scale rollout and tests of experiments that have been done over decades. But in 2017, we saw an uptick of whatever projects that were done clandestinely, whether it was putting smart dust in a small, like in a town over here, or doing all these things, really took hold. And I don't know if it's a funding was given, but we covered in another presentation dealing with UN put out a directive in 2017 to launch a ton of satellites in 2017 and to after 2017 to start the plan to get the 5G tower infrastructure installed all over the planet. So,
and it was
we're
also
saying is that yeah.
I was just going to say it was also when Moderna was doing their experiment under the guise of curing cancer. Yeah, they were doing their.
Yeah, so we're just saying basically it was a giant marker on the timeline of a very long timeline.
I think another way to answer your question, Courtney, and again, this is off the top of my head, but they put metamaterials in the form of smart dust in the environment. They'll spray it in the skies. They will cover it. They'll cover landscapes with it. There's a whole bunch of work about how they're putting it into the soil. They put it into plants. They put it into food. They put it into the water supply. So what you do is you look up patents for patents and different white papers and articles and scientific
and it's readily available.
And it's all out there. And it's like, well, here's a giant contract where they just paid this company to put a whole bunch of graphene metamaterial type stuff into the public water supply, right? And so that's how they get it into your body, is by saturating your environment and things that you eat, things that you drink. And it really does make a difference. Like if you live in a culture and an area that's like a big city, lots of industry is there, you're going to be super saturated with this stuff. If you live out in a countryside area, you'll still have, because they still have planes, they still have satellites. Sure. So it's not like there's nowhere, there's anywhere where you can just be completely free of this. Right. But there's places where there's more saturation and places where there's less saturation. So
sure. Yeah, I guess and a lot of it is if you're spreading it from the air anyway, it will filter throughout the entire ecosystem. It will eventually end up in your food. It will end up in the water supply.
Yeah.
It just might not be at the rate that the handlers will want it to be. Also, on top of that, physics still applies here. If these things are made out of metals and semiconductor components, or even if it is a lipid or a plastic or a polymer, they're still exposed to UV light. They're still exposed to the weather conditions, which would explain why they have to continue to fly the planes and keep dropping a new load off, because these things don't last forever. They eventually do erode with time.
I had read a document where it was a very, very long document, but there was a section where they were talking about using pollen to put these kind of nanoparticles into because of the molecular structure is kind of hollow. And so it was a good vehicle. So I was like, great. People are already, having a irritation from pollen, and now they're putting these particulates inside them, which I can't be a good compound. So
yeah, absolutely. If you go to the next slide, we'll just introduce the wireless body area network.
Yes.
A lot of people finally are starting to learn what this is. Yeah. Excuse me. So our bodies are being used as communication systems since 1995. A wireless body area network, or a body sensor network, connects independent nodes, e.g. sensors and actuators, that are situated in the clothes, on the body, or under the skin of a person. So it's inside your body as well. The network typically expands over the whole human body, and the nodes are connected through a wireless communication channel. That's a definition that comes directly from this particular white paper here that we've got cited. Wireless body area networks are on the nanoscale, so we're showing you where they are, and this is your basic computer area networks here with the WAN, the RAN. So the biosensors from the wireless body area network are at the nanoscale. And if you go to the next slide, we're going to define what biosensors are so you can understand what makes up these wireless body area networks. A biosensor is an integrated receptor transducer device, which can convert a biological response into an electrical signal. The design and development of biosensors have taken a center stage for researchers or scientists in the recent decade owing to the wide range of biosensor applications, such as healthcare and disease diagnosis, environmental monitoring, water and food quality monitoring, and drug delivery. That'll come up later in just a second with wireless drugging, okay? Biosensors have been around since 1956. The first being electrochemical. They were made commercially available in 2010, and many different kinds of biosensors have been developed and are used for all sorts of different things. There's several different kinds of biosensors, optical, piezoelectric, electrochemical, hybridized, synthetic biology. That's your DNA biosensors. They make it out of parts of your DNA. There are a million ways that biosensors have been put into human bodies without a person's knowledge or consent: air, water, food, etc. We just talked about that. Mm-hmm. So it's the same. It's the same thing with metamaterials. It's like it's saturating the human body with these little biosensors, little antennas, but they don't just receive. They do things, right? They are micro and nano in scale, and they're located in the interstitial fluid in between your cells. Biosensors use your body's natural electric energy to power themselves and emit a data signal that is connected to the Internet of Things. They communicate with electricity just like your cell phone. Cell phones can be bootstrapping devices for biosensors, and biosensors can be controlled using optogenetics, which is controlling biological systems through light. And this energy harvesting, where they use your body's electricity, that's going to come up when we get to the crypto mining, because they're using your body to mine crypto. And so we go to the next slide. We're going to talk about
I won't address it now, but I've heard some crazy stories on that with targeted individuals. So,
yeah. Oh, I bet.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the human biofield. It is electrical and has an electromagnetic field. All the chemical reactions in your body are mediated by an electrical signal that goes throughout the system. The biofield or biological field is a complex organizing energy field engaged in the generation, maintenance, and regulation of biological homeodynamics. And this is from the NIH's website, so they acknowledge that there is an electrical biofield.
Isn't this what was called the aura as well? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I just want to tie that because the whole kind of New Age movement is very connected to this. Yeah. So I think people think I'm a little strange when I tie the tech to the spiritual, but there's really a link, and that the fact that they named the biofield the aura, I think, is indicative.
There's definitely a link, Courtney, just like there's a link with, if you look at the IEEE papers, the narratives that are given on some of these papers on the architecture of how the wide body area network, or some of these other industrial revolution type networks function has to be given a scientific narrative. It can't dive into the history of how such a technology would come about, or talk about some of the intricacies of what the biosensors are used to know in order to be used in such a network. And what you're bringing about, because we've seen it in other areas too, where the things about the New Age community, the way things are defined and termed and called, is almost to kind of cast a level of someone who's not in the New Age community will look at that and say, well, this is kind of like quackery. This is like woo woo.
It's discredited.
It's done on purpose, because you're not supposed to be able to sift through the real agenda that's underlying that, like what we're covering right now.
Right.
So I think it's right that you're actually bringing to light how there's this parallel interpretation through the New Age lens
Mhm.
with what we're talking about.
Yeah, our bodies are electrical. That's how our bodies are made. That's how God made our bodies. We have an electric field. The heart's electrical.
Yep.
But to say no, it's not, to call it the aura, to say it's all woo-woo,
Right.
that's one way of trying to discredit
Yeah.
this area of knowledge about human anatomy and biology,
Yep.
so that people won't pay attention to it. Because if you do pay attention to it and you understand how it works, then you would have control over your own natural energy, your own biofield.
Right.
They want to control your biofield.
Right.
And the transhumanism, what it's actually doing is it's hijacking people's biofields, people's energy.
So it's more important now than ever because everything we've talked about, fields, electromagnetism, things that are at the micro nanoscale, require tools, require a microscope in order to analyze and see and detect the things that we're talking about. Okay, so there are a ton of medical journal articles and white papers that discuss using electricity produced by the human body as a conductor for wireless power transfer. The biofield is scientifically accepted term in Western medicine, but in other cultures,
here they even say
Yeah.
the prana. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Chi, prana,
Yep.
life force.
you see them because these are other societies, other cultures that have their own scientific foundation, that have their own name for these things. But in general, it's the life force that's emitted through all living things. So your body naturally has an electromagnetic frequency waves from your biofield. It naturally emits signals. This is what they're measuring on an EEG in a hospital, for example, for signs of life. Knowledge of biofield was removed from public teachings in Western medicine through the Flexner Report in 1910. It was then hidden in academia all these years, and it's been developed upon in the AI and biomedical engineering tech industry. Technologies using the biofield have been deployed on the population without a person's knowledge and consent. So if you remove that foundational knowledge, through basically through school for the curriculum, and unless you're in a very specialized field, then very few people know how things work, like the new consumer items that are coming out, like things like the Fitbit.
Right.
People don't really care about how it works. It just works,
Right. Right.
So the next slide is talking more about that energy harvesting.
Oh, yeah, this is so disturbing. I mean, all of it is, but this energy harvesting, I mean, it's really out of like a dystopian sci-fi kind of.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff we've covered, work of other people who have researched things like quantum dots, and like
which
that's how
Epstein largely funded. He started seeing, because he was funding MIT.
Wow. Yeah, okay. Well, that part. Yeah. Okay. Now it's all
comes together. Right? That's what I'm saying. These things, I'm a dot connector, so like I just start seeing these patterns, and I'm like, wait, this is connected to this. It does really seem to be largely connected. Not all of it, but yeah.
So what they're doing is they're energy harvesting your body and the electricity in your body in order to run a terahertz network. That's the mesh network. All this different nanotechnology. This is coming from this ResearchGate paper. Nanoscale wireless networks are expected to revolutionize a variety of domains with significant advances conceivable in in-body healthcare. In healthcare, these nano networks will consist of energy harvesting nano devices, passively flowing through the bloodstream, taking actions at certain locations, and communicating results to a powerful body area network nodes. And that's directly from this paper. So yes, creepy stuff. There's a lot of information on this, and just in general, it's like you wonder why you feel so tired all the time. This might have a little something to do with that, right? So this connects us also to the Internet of Bodies, which on the next slide, we'll just define what that is.
It's a growing industry of devices that monitor the human body, collect health and other personal information, and transmit data over the internet. And by the way, a lot of these definitions are defined by organizations like the IEEE. If you type in like the wireless area network, so forth. Researchers who have been finding nanotechnology when they're looking at the blood under the microscope, with the last pandemic, need to understand that there's an industry of people who work on work on daily jobs that regulate these nano networks. So somewhere there are people who know what they're doing, and they are monitoring these networks. These are the biosensors and components that make up the wireless body area network and the Internet of Bodies. And then we just have some headlines from the World Economic Forum tracking how our bodies work can change our lives. That's for the Internet of Things. But then we have another article dealing with the Center for Urban Transformation. We're entering an era of the Internet of Bodies, collecting our physical data via a range of devices that can be implanted, swallowed, or worn. This is a huge amount of health-related data that can improve human well-being around the world. So there's always the promise of improving human well-being is for your medical needs, right? Because now by default, you are the patient. It's not like you had to go into a hospital. You just are the patient by default. And then what you see on the right here are things that people were finding under the microscope at the beginning of the last pandemic. And this was the work from La Quinta Columna. Where
Mick Anderson, part of La Quinta Columna.
Mick Anderson was finding under the microscope and compared it to academic literature, what he was finding, and verified the scale at which he was finding these things at to components that were in the literature. And these were different types of wireless technology-based components like nano routers or power devices to provide electrical power to these devices.
So it's like exactly what we said earlier about if you have a white paper on it and then you find something under the microscope that is proving that the thing in the white paper is actually existing. That's what Mick Anderson and La Quinta Columna started doing early on in COVID. They were finding things in the vaccine vials and in the blood and all over the place, and they were able to identify what these things were that they were finding in the white papers written about this
real evidence-based science. And Courtenay, this is where we feel this really needs to continue and really proliferate at this point. I can't say that word right now.
It's okay.
Is that more people need to have the evidence and bring it forward and to put into the society at large, because people rightly have a question: how are they able to do this? Well, all of this stuff is in the unseen realm at this point, so we need to get the evidence out there for people to know that this is in our environment and what we can do to fight against it.
Right.
Yeah, and so if you go to the next slide, I'll just kind of preface this. You had covered Project Salus, I think, on one of your as well.
Yeah, I've mentioned it a few times. Yeah.
Yeah. So now, when COVID rolled out, and Operation Warp Speed was being rolled out, the vaccine czar was Moncef Slaoui, and he put out a statement that was captured in an article, which I believe he got fired for saying this later on. I think that's what happened with him. But he let it slip out that everybody that takes the COVID vaccine is going to be monitored through what he called a pharmacovigilance system. Okay.
First time I ever heard that
who
word.
said that? Who is this?
Moncef Slaoui, the vaccine czar for Operation Warp Speed.
Okay.
And so this pharmacovigilance system, this is what Project Salus is.
Yes.
It is the tracking and tracing of everyone who has taken the COVID injections to see how that's doing. Now, also, just a little note on the bottom here. I don't know if you saw this, but can you just explain the 5G?
I don't know if you remember towards the beginning, maybe in end of 2020, 2021, a video was going viral online when someone, presumably a cell tower installer, went up to one of the 5G installations and pulled out the rectangular antenna and opened up to get the circuit board, and he put on camera the circuit board. And on that circuit board, there was a little stage on the circuit that was called COVID. And he's like, I've never seen this happen. I've never seen this before. What is this? Can anyone tell me exactly what this is? Because this is not. I've never seen this in any, and it's right, So it's just to show that there's a network, there's a COVID network in operation, um, presumably covertly in that area. So
they've been setting up these wireless body area networks, and this is how they're tracking and tracing human bodies through things that are in the body.
And also, if you throw that in combination,
biosensors, metamaterials.
right? Those who took the injection were showing signs of having were magnetizing. That parts of where they're magnetized. Also,
there you go.
and
You
then
found it.
yes.
You found it.
So we have that. So we're bringing together all the different fragments because we want everyone to remember and start formulating what we're seeing here. At the same time, people were emitting MAC addresses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people say that was false, but there was evidence of that, right?
Well, there's evidence of that. Also, you had a French team, research team, have a controlled environment where they were pulling people off the street, bringing them to a park. I think it was somewhere in Paris. I don't know. And it was in a place that was void of a cell tower or EMF Bluetooth signals. Make sure they had their phones, and so there was no noise.
They took their phones away.
They
didn't have any devices on them.
Just random people who volunteered for the experiment. So they had a few dozen standing in the middle of the field, and then this team with their laptops and their probes pointed at the team, at the research, at the volunteers, were able to verify that they were giving off a signal, and they were MAC addresses, even though they didn't have any hardware on them.
Wow. Yeah, but it was just the vaccinated ones that were giving off the signal.
And
the unvaccinated ones were not giving off a signal.
And then people all over the world started doing similar things, like going to remote areas in Japan, to a shrine, and finding that people walking through. And not only that, these MAC addresses weren't. When you start using IEEE standard for at least for transmitting and receiving, if you're going to use that, normally you'd have a speaker identify as a speaker, car audio identify as a car audio, or Bluetooth on your TV as a smart TV. And these are random hexadecimal alphanumeric codes that had no rhyme or reason. That was another indicator too. So
in the early days of COVID, when they first started rolling out the vaccines and we heard about this, we did our own experimenting. We made some videos on it as well, where we put our phone in developer mode. We didn't use an app on the phone. We just used developer mode and then search for Bluetooth MAC addresses. And we went to different crowded places where we knew everybody had been freshly vaccinated.
In order to take the flight to come to
in order to enter the country, you needed to have the vaccine passport. So we knew, and we would turn the thing on and we would see hundreds and hundreds of unidentified MAC addresses, and it really creeped us out. So
I mean, you'll get the iPhone, you'll get the iPhone, and you'll get someone else's smartphone here, and a TV there, but then you have all of these random, and it was
so
very creepy.
And there's a Bluetooth documentary that was done, and it's been translated into English. It was done in Spanish originally, but check out the Bluetooth documentary, because they did some really interesting experiments to show and prove the theory behind the MAC addresses, and it's pretty wild stuff. But let's move forward to the medical body area networks.
Okay.
Next slide. So all of this is for our health, right? That's what they tell us. Medical body area networks are networks of wireless sensors, often no bigger than a Band-Aid, which can transmit data on a patient's vital health indicators to their doctor or hospital. The FCC mandated the M-band in 2014. The M-band is a subset of the W-band. So this is where they're putting it into hospitals. The first use will likely be used in hospitals, but they have longer term applications, which could be remote monitoring devices that allow doctors to check on their patients at home. So how are they doing that? Right? They're able to track and trace you in your home from the hospital. The networks can potentially alert doctors to problems before the patient's condition becomes critical, thus avoiding the need for acute intervention. The technology has more laws allowing it to do whatever it wants to your body than you do. At the regulatory agencies, they've been very busy creating the legal structures for the W bans, M bans, wireless drugging, and patient compliance for many years now. So what we're talking about, what you want to do is research AI precision healthcare and all the new advances that they're coming up with. They're implementing all of these different technologies into the medical structure.
So,
And
sorry, go on. Yeah,
it's really tricky. It's really tricky because, people have health issues and people need help in healing. And there are technologies